Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Carrolet Thomas, and welcome to my channel. Thank you to those of you who have subscribed to my channel. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. Today's message is toxic relationships are nothing to play with. This is a prophetic word from God. Toxic relationships are nothing to play with. To be clear, let's define toxic relationships. A toxic relationship is a dynamic characterized by repeated patterns of manipulation, control, and emotional or psychological harm. Unlike healthy partnerships built on mutual respect and support, these connections are emotionally draining, often causing one partner to feel constantly criticized, devalued, and isolated from friends and family. While the specific dynamic varies depending on whether it is a romantic, familial, or professional relationship, toxic environments generally share several core warning signs. Constant criticism, frequently belittling, mockery, or insults that consistently undermine your self-esteem. Control and isolation, efforts by one person to monitor your whereabouts, restrict your independence, or distance you from a supportive network. Gaslighting, a manipulative tactic where the other person makes you doubt your own reality, memory, or sanity. Lack of accountability, an ongoing refusal to apologize, leading to consistent blame shifting and an inability to resolve conflicts fairly. Emotional volatility, unpredictable behavior, explosive anger, or the silent treatment used to create fear and anxiety. Recognizing these patterns is the first step toward addressing the dynamic, as prolonged exposure can lead to severe health consequences, including chronic stress, anxiety, and depression. Toxic relationships are found in families, among friends, associates, on jobs, in schools, in churches, etc., and they are nothing to play with. For this prophetic word, we are going to look at a few biblical examples of toxic relationships and their outcomes. First, Jacob and Esau. The toxic relationship between the twin brothers, Jacob and Esau, was defined by parental favoritism, ruthless manipulation, and deceit. This bitter sibling rivalry began in the womb and escalated to betrayal, forcing Jacob into a 20-year exile, though it ultimately culminated in a dramatic, tearful reconciliation. Roots of the toxicity. Parental favoritism. Their parents exacerbated the family divide. Isaac favored the outdoorsman and hunter Esau, while Rebekah favored the quiet, domestic Jacob. The stolen birthright. When Esau returned famished from the fields, Jacob exploited his brother's hunger, manipulating him into trading his firstborn birthright for a simple bowl of lentil stew. The stolen blessing. At their mother Rebekah's urging, a deceitful Jacob impersonated his hairy brother by wearing animal skins to trick their blind, elderly father Isaac. This secured the coveted patriarchal blessing meant for Esau, which granted wealth, authority, and covenant inheritance. The outcome: the vow of vengeance. Enraged by the betrayal, Esau vowed to murder his brother. This forced Jacob to flee to Haran, leaving behind his home and family. The return and reconciliation. After 2 decades in exile, Jacob returned to his homeland. Terrified of Esau's wrath, Jacob sent lavish peace offerings and bowed repeatedly upon their meeting. However, Esau met him with unexpected grace, running to embrace and weep with his brother. Divergent legacies. While they made peace and parted amicably, their descendants, the Israelites from Jacob and the Edomites from Esau, revolved in tension and historical conflict for generations. People are, at some point, going to have to become aware and admit to the real jealousy, envy, and coveting that exists in families. Unfortunately, it is common between siblings and is often passed down through generations, transferred through the parents. It is a hard topic that people don't want to talk about, but it is a matter of the heart. Next, Jacob and Laban. The relationship between Jacob and his uncle and father-in-law, Laban, is one of the most notable, toxic, manipulative dynamics in biblical history. Spanning 20 years, it was defined by greed, continuous deception, exploitation, and emotional abuse, and ultimately ended in a tense confrontation and a legally binding separation. Key characteristics of the toxic dynamic. The power imbalance. Laban frequently used his position of power as an uncle and boss to take advantage of Jacob, constantly shifting the terms of employment whenever Jacob succeeded. The marriage trap. After Jacob worked 7 years to marry Rachel, Laban ruthlessly deceived him, substituting his older daughter Leah on the wedding night. Laban then forced Jacob to work an additional 7 years just to have the wife he originally earned. Constant contract manipulation. Once Jacob finally negotiated to keep specific portions of the livestock as his wages, Laban changed Jacob's salary 10 times, trying to cripple Jacob's ability to build independent wealth. Narcissistic projection. When Jacob eventually prospered, despite the odds, through hard work and divinely guided animal husbandry, Laban and his sons accused Jacob of stealing from them, conveniently ignoring the 14 plus years of free and underpaid labor Jacob had provided. The outcome. The escape. Realizing that Laban would never let him go, and fearing that his uncle might resort to violence, Jacob gathered his wives, children, and accumulated flocks, and secretly fled Haran while Laban was away shearing sheep. The pursuit. Upon discovering they were gone, an enraged Laban chased Jacob for 7 days, catching up to him in the hill country of Gilead. Divine intervention. The night before Laban reached the camp, God appeared to him in a dream, sternly warning him not to harm Jacob or say anything to him. The confrontation and Gilead. When Laban caught up to Jacob, Jacob finally snapped and fiercely rebuked Laban for decades of exploitation, broken promises, and unfair treatment. Knowing his hands were tied by God's warning, Laban backed down. The covenant. The two men ultimately made a peace treaty, erecting a stone monument called Gilead, meaning witness heap. This served as a literal and symbolic border, a boundary line neither was permitted to cross to harm the other. Laban then returned to his homeland, freeing Jacob to continue his journey back to Canaan. Anytime a person has to trick another person to get what they want, that is a toxic relationship. That person cannot be trusted. And you need God to help you with that situation expeditiously. And lastly, Joseph and his brothers. The toxic relationship between Joseph and his brothers was defined by intense jealousy over parental favoritism and Joseph's provocative behavior. This poisonous dynamic culminated in a murderous plot, their decision to sell him into slavery, and an ultimate outcome of reconciliation and family restoration. The breakdown of their relationship was rooted in several major factors. Parental favoritism. Their father, Jacob, clearly preferred Joseph, giving him a richly ornamented robe, which alienated the other brothers. Joseph's immaturity. Joseph frequently reported his brother's misdeeds to Jacob and boasted about dreams of his brothers and even his parents bowing down to him. The betrayal. While the brothers initially plotted to kill Joseph, they ultimately threw him into a pit and sold him to traveling merchants for 20 shekels of silver. They then faked his death by dipping his robe in animal blood and showing it to their father. The outcome. Despite the brothers' attempts to eliminate him, Joseph survived and rose to power as the vizier of Egypt after accurately interpreting the Pharaoh's dreams. When a severe famine struck the region, Joseph's brothers traveled to Egypt seeking food, unknowingly facing the brother they had betrayed. Instead of seeking revenge, Joseph tested their character, eventually revealed his identity, and offered complete forgiveness. The family was reunited, and the brothers relocated to Egypt, where Joseph provided for them. The outcome shifted from a tragic fracture to a story of redemption, as Joseph concluded that his brothers' evil intentions were ultimately used by God to save many lives. We have to be careful how we treat people, as we never know who God is using and for what purposes. The Bible says in Hebrews chapter 13, verse 2, "Be not forgetful to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares." Some people have created toxic relationships where God intended to use the relationship to be a blessing. And to the person that caused the breach, it is their loss. In the case of Joseph and his brothers, prophecy was fulfilled, and all is well that ends well. But the best thing to do is not to fool around and find out, because toxic relationships are nothing to play with. I hope and pray that this message has been a blessing to you. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. And if you feel led, you can make a donation. Thank you for listening. and supporting my YouTube channel. God bless you, and just be happy.